If we take observed phenomena, bring it into the laboratory and show that it's repeatable, that's science in astronomy. We take the observed phenomena in the Bible. We have a model. It's repeatable. 14 times in the Bible. We have a real object. We only needed 2 sightings of the past to figure out that Halley's Comet was coming back in a timely fashion. That was only 2. We have 14. I wish this object wasn't true. I stayed a skeptic for the longest time that I could until I had no more footing to stand on as a skeptic. I know exactly what a skeptic mind is thinking about on this object because I was there. But there's white paper reports, there's data, and we have overlapping evidence, and there's first-hand accounts in historical documents and biblical records that I can show 3 artifacts that give us the exact date when it passed, within an hour of its passing. The Niebuhr, there's a disc from Nineveh that I show in my charts. That was the time of Jonah's warning. Gives it the exact date. That was a 40-day warning. Gives it the exact date when it crossed Joseph of Egypt. We have another one on the ceiling in Egypt, where that gives us the year and the date of Job's problem. Read these stories, look at these stories through an eye of an astronomer on the events that they're describing, like Job's trouble. His entire flocks of camel, sheep, and the shepherds were totally consumed where there was no evidence of their bodies even. And a great wind, which is the concussion wave, hit the house that his daughters and sons were celebrating in, which is around Passover, and the house collapsed on them. Go read Job again. Go read these stories and look at it through the eyes of an astronomer and tell me what you find. Overwhelming evidence. How do you get a double eclipse when it's impossible without a third object? We have a real object. I hate to say it. We have a real object. It has a rough estimate of an orbit of 360 years. And we're presently showing the signs of approach on Earth of this object in multiple ways. Global warming is a farce. We have global changes caused by this planet, but it's not CO2. Mars is warming up. Last time I checked, there's no cars on Mars. So how can it be CO2 warming it up?
And I have a second question, too, a follow-up, and I apologize. I didn't send it in. This just came as you were talking. Sure. If you remember, Malachi Martin at one time warned about the Griffith Observatory, and that the Vatican was using the Griffith Observatory to watch for an inbound object. And then later on, Tom Horn, I think about a year or so ago, actually went to the Griffith Observatory and was shown some data, where they're using the Lucifer device, and they were watching something on a constant basis. And do you have any knowledge of that, or would that be involving your Planet 7A?
I have supporting evidence to that. I don't have those. I can't testify for those exact points. When I published my information, I had a retired NASA engineer that contacted me. He also worked for the Office of Naval Research. He was one of the designers and the engineers that worked on that Lucifer device. Remember, the Lucifer is not the telescope itself, it's the electronic package attached to it. And that sensitivity of that object can measure up to 1 photon of light. It's not, if you go read the old data, they changed that. They don't tell you that it's that accurate. That came online shortly after NASA went silent in December 1992. The Vatican telescope came online in 1993. This gentleman also made the first infrared objects cameras that he made were smaller ones. One went to Dr. Harrington in New Zealand. Another one, a lady somewhere in the U.S. That he helped mounted to her telescope And he asked her, he says, what are we doing today? As far as what are we taking pictures of? She says, we're receiving signals from probes, and we're going to coordinate where to aim this camera. But at that time, he didn't put two and two together, knowing that it was the Pioneer and Voyager probe, that they were looking for this object. As they clearly stated in articles, during the launch, and by the time it reached out there, it took like 16 years for it to reach the designated point they were reaching. They're clearly stating that they were looking for this outer planet that called Planet X. Well, they went silent December 1992 because their instrument they had triangulated the position, and it didn't have a circular orbit around the sun. It had extreme elliptical orbit heading towards the sun. Well, that made it a possible threat because it was on the ecliptic. Ecliptic means Earth planetary plane. They went silent after that point until they could study it further. This is where the Vatican, the government, what is the government giving the most advanced infrared instrument to a private entity like a religious organization? Can anybody explain that to me? And they had verified it as well on pictures. Malachi Martin is correct. There is an object. He just didn't have the date on. Keep in mind, the way he stated it was from a viewpoint of an astronomer. He said on that year, how did he say it? It will be validated maybe in a certain year. Well, that's when it reaches the edge of our solar system where normal telescopes could reach. This was before Reagan putting up or he didn't know about the laser system that Reagan and them were putting up there. In the 80s, Reagan started the process of developing large enough lasers to be able to block our view, to cloak it. Because the Bible indicates to us in the book of Revelation, we'll have a short warning, maybe 6 to 9 months at the most. Well, that's not a realistic point of view in modern time if no one's interfering with our view. We should have 16 years of warning. At the edge of our solar system to the sun takes 16 years for the normal travel. Kepler's laws of planetary motion with 360-year orbit would take 16 years to reach the sun. The Bible clearly indicates we're not going to have 16-year warnings. Why is that? Again, the Bible is indicating something very correct because it's there. We can see the effects of it. We just can't view it yet, but we will. And I even indicate people can download the information for free. I put estimates for 2021. This is 2020 and 2021, as the book of Revelation says. The crossing of this planet will happen in a time frame when the moon is at the foot of Virgo in the nighttime skies, not the daytime skies. Look at the qualifiers. It's in the text. You got to go read it clearly.
I'll jump in here and ask you a question because you mentioned a couple of things that are very interesting, and that is that scene that the Apostle John sees in Revelation 12, where he sees the vision with the woman with the cloak with the sun and the moon at her feet. And of course, that is an astronomical depiction of the skies as seen by John. And we didn't start to see it like that until recently, in recent years. Of course, prophecy teachers used to, attribute all kinds of prophetic symbolism to that. But it's only in recent years, as science has advanced, that we and more people have been looking at the skies and using astronomical software, that we have become aware that this sort of event happened at the birth of the Messiah. And it's probably going to happen right prior to the second return of the Lord. And this event just happened last year during the month of September. And I was, there was a lot of rumors about that, and there was a lot of buzz on the internet about that event, which it's something that is very, very rare it does not happen that often. It happens only every several thousand years. That exact event like that, there are some other events that resemble, but not that exact event like it happened this last September. And so I was just going to ask you about that. Could the event that happened this last September, I believe it was September 23rd, could that have been, and by the way, it happened on a very symbolic day of Rosh Hashanah, very, very interesting, and right on the Sabbath. It's incredible, the parallels. If anything else, the parallels that took place. Could that have anything or could that, let me rephrase that, could that be, do you think, prophetically speaking to us about the possible arrival of this object and the return of the Lord, the day of the Lord, and so forth? Do you think, can you speak to that a bit? Because I know there was a big buzz in this last few months about that, and nothing happened.